Hello everyone. My name's Chi Cavendelli. I'm the director at Community Links, which is part of Catch-22. Today, I'll be your moderator for this workshop entitled More Than Mentors, Early Action Approach to Children and Young People's Mental Health Through Peer Support. Thank you for making time to join us, of course. A few housekeeping notes before we really begin the substantive part. The session will last for 45 minutes in total, and obviously I'll do my best to stick as closely as I can to time. During the event, if you have any questions for any of the speakers, please ask these in the session Q&A on the right-hand side of your screens. Please be sure you're in the session tab and not the event tab though. Otherwise, the question will be seen by the whole event. When I see your question, I'll ask a question to the speakers at the end of the session itself, assuming we have time. And obviously, if you'd like to ask the question live on screen, which you're more than welcome to do, you can share your audio and video, and I'll bring you onto the screen again if there's time. You can also use a thumbs up icon to upvote a question if this is something you're keen to do. If you'd like to follow up a question, please preface the question with the words "follow up." Now that the housekeeping is out the way, I can see that our speakers have joined us, and I'm delighted to introduce them. Firstly, we have Dr. Graziella Fergio, who is a clinical director of Strategic Mind and a chartered clinical psychologist. We have Dr. Nick Barnes, a young people psychiatrist and cognitive analytic therapist, and Jason Turner, a youth program manager with over 15 years worth of experience working with children and young people. Together, Graziella, Nick, and Jason are the formidable team behind the More Than Mentors program, all three having worked on More Than Mentors since its inception in 2017. So, without further ado, let me pass you on to the speakers for their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chi, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. I'm not sure how many kind of guests we've got in the workshop at the moment, but as we work, while we wait for some additional kind of guests and colleagues to join, we'd just like you to have a think about kind of the following two statements or questions, and if you wouldn't mind, in the chat box, if you'd just like to kind of place some comments or thoughts or suggestions against these two questions. So what does peer mentoring mean to you? And what are your experiences of peer mentoring? And we'll hold this open for about kind of a minute to a minute and a half, which will just kind of allow kind of colleagues to join. Chi, as a moderator, would you be able to kind of just shout out some kind of comments and thoughts as they are placed in the chat box for us?
Yes, of course. No questions through yet, Jason.
Okay, thank you, no worries. So for those who may have just joined, as we're waiting for colleagues to join us, there's a couple of statements we've got up on screen, and we'd just like you to place your kind of thoughts or comments against these two kind of questions in the chat box. So what does peer mentoring mean to you, and what are your experiences of peer mentoring?
Wait for a question. Perhaps I could venture what the peer mentor means, or address the first question, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
To me, I would imagine the peer is the really crucial word there, because I see peers as equals. So it's something about equals coming together for mentoring, and I'm sure you'll sort of correct me or add to that when the time comes.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chief. Thank you for kind of your kind of comments or observations on the kind of the statement around peer mentoring. And I think what we do is we'll move on, and we've got kind of a definition here that we kind of use And it's a definition that's kind of tailored more towards kind of peer mentoring in a kind of mental health arena. And kind of definition that we use is a trained child or young person supporting other children or young people through offering help and support, building emotional resilience, promoting well-being, positive mental health, and signposting to further support. So that's one of the definitions that we kind of hold and we use during our kind of program or during the Modern Mentors program. Okay, and here is just kind of a brief summary of the workshop this morning. So the first part is going to be kind of led by myself, and we'll be looking at kind of what is Modern Mentors. We'll be looking at our reach and some of our kind of co-refinement. I will then kind of take you through what it's been like for us to kind of work through kind of COVID-19, and then looking at some kind of exciting kind of programs for the year ahead. I will then hand over to Graziella, who will look at kind of our partners on the program and how we'll bring our kind of expertise to the Modern Mentors program. And there's one word in the next kind of bullet point that we always use on the program, and that's kind of relationships. And we always stress that relationships is one of the most important kind of aspects of the program. So Graziella will be just looking at kind of relationships in supporting change. And then kind of Graziella will hand over to Nick, who will be kind of looking at kind of the importance of building an evidence base, looking at kind of a part of our evaluation, but then also looking at some emerging evidence and sustainability of Modern Mentors. And then, as kind of Chi alluded to at the start, what we'll do is we'll open the floor up for a Q&A session. So here's just kind of an overview, and Chi kind of gave us a bit of an overview of our presentation team for this morning's workshop. So, okay, our first slide. So what is Modern Mentors? So Modern Mentors is an evidence-based, innovative model of peer mentoring that is both psychologically informed and clinically supervised. The program supports young people, offering an early action approach to addressing mental health and other support needs where they may present. The program was co-developed and co-delivered as a pilot study in Newham, East London in 2015-2016, and has since been further co-refined and co-developed to reach young people across London. The Modern Mentors program is co-led by youth practitioners from Community Links, supported by clinical supervision from the East London Foundation Trust, and in particular the Newham CAMS service. And we have been independently evaluated by the Anna Freud Centre's evidence-based practice unit. The program draws on best evidence and practice in the field, exploring peer mentoring as a way of building resilience in young people, enabling opportunities for change, and as a way of preventing future significant mental health needs in young people. As a team, we've always worked with the understanding that resilience is not solely about what a child or young person can overcome. As a team, we've always worked with the understanding, that resilience is not solely about what a child or young person can do to overcome adversity or having the ability to kind of bounce back, but rather what can the systems around the child or young person do to change adversity that they are facing. And it's a quote that we kind of use, and it's beating the odds whilst changing the odds. So I'd just like to kind of take us through a little bit about the kind of Modern Mentors model, some of the kind of key aspects and components, just so we kind of get a bit of a greater understanding about the program. So the program trains young people aged 11 to 21, and this is kind of dependent on what type of program we're delivering. And the training is delivered usually kind of in both school and community settings. So for example, a youth club. And we train the young people to become mentors for a 2-day program of learning. So through training, mentors explore 5 kind of training themes with several embedded psychological theories. I'm just going to kind of take you through a quick overview of the 5 kind of training themes. So our first is the mentoring role. And this kind of training theme is all about inspiring our mentors, kind of exploring their privilege and the importance of the role, looking at some kind of core mentoring competencies, appreciating the boundaries that we need to make sure the program is safe, and we like to develop a culture of peer support. Our second theme is around relationships, And in here, we kind of promote and ensure mentors understand the importance of a mentoring relationship. We encourage mentors to use a number of skills to build and sustain relationships. For example, these would be kind of showing an interest and asking for more information, active listening, having a shared enjoyment of achievement, and agreeing common purpose and goals, and understanding the mentee's perspective. Our third training theme is around exploring change. And in here, we kind of support the mentors to feel equipped to enable their mentees to explore opportunities for change during the program. Our fourth training theme is around taking notice. And in here, it's all about understanding and supporting the mentees to think about their feelings and awareness of the links between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, recognizing emotions, encouraging positive self-talk, and encouraging the mentee to undertake positive activities. Our fifth training theme is, is keeping safe. So in here, we enable and support the mentors to recognize when concerns, or whether these be safeguarding concerns or well-being concerns, need to be raised, and how they should be doing this. We also have a kind of a strong focus on safeguarding and confidentiality throughout the training, as well as providing some reassurance and support for the mentors as they approach their first mentoring sessions. And sometimes this can be kind of a really, really nervous kind of lead-in. Mentors are not 100% sure what to expect. So kind of as we provide that reassurance, it kind of settles some of those nerves, kind of fears or anxieties that mentors may kind of have. Mentors are recruited through two pathways, and this is either a self-referral pathway or a staff/professional pathway. We usually ensure that our mentors are interviewed for the role prior to undergoing their training. Our mentees. So our mentees are generally aged 11 to 15 and are young people with early markers of concern in relation to either their behaviour and or their emotional well-being. And again, our mentees are recruited through kind of the same two pathways. That would be a self-referral pathway or a staff/professional kind of referral. So once we've trained our mentors, we've recruited our mentees, we then kind of move into our one-to-one mentoring sessions. And as we move into the one-to-one peer mentoring, the aim of the peer mentoring sessions is to create an atmosphere which kind of facilitates effective mentoring. This involves creating an informal but safe environment within our setting, whether this be a school or a youth club. And this is to encourage mentors and mentees to come back each week, to feel comfortable and to get to know each other, but most importantly, to have some fun. The mentoring sessions usually take place typically weekly over a period of 10 weeks and do take place before school, during school, and at the end of the school day. The one-to-one mentoring sessions usually last up to 60 minutes. At that point, our mentees leave the session and either kind of go home or back to lessons. And our mentors then stay with us for kind of an additional 45 minutes for a session based on supervision. So the supervision session for the mentors kind of facilitates a space for some self-reflection, sharing of best practice, peer support, and it's an opportunity for us to deliver some additional training to our mentors. And this is also a space where our mentors can raise any kind of well-being concerns or safeguarding concerns that they may have or that may have arose during their kind of mentoring session. So this slide is just a kind of a brief overview or a quick overview, just showing some of the areas that the Modern Mentors program has worked in and we've delivered programs in since 2016. So as you can see, we've covered some schools in Havering, some youth groups and community groups and schools in Havering, Haringey, Hackney, Barking and Dagenham, and Newham. So this next slide, it just represents a bit of an overview of the program, kind of in numbers, and just highlights in that final column some of the developments of new programs. So The number of recruited mentors and mentees is inclusive of all young people who have signed up and were assigned kind of a randomized identification number. And of these young people, some of these young people would have gone on to complete the program, and others may have dropped out midway through the program or may not have even started the program. But kind of importantly, the mentor and mentee columns, so our columns kind of 2 and 3, show the number of young people who have completed paired outcomes across the years 1 to 4. And importantly, it's the paired outcomes that have been used and have been needed to be used within the analysis in the data set from our evaluators, the Analytic Centre. So we would have had more young people complete the program, but for various kind of reasons haven't been able or wasn't able to complete their paired outcome measures. Thus couldn't be counted towards the final number of young people who have completed the program from our evaluation perspective. So throughout the program cycle, we've consistently kind of looked at co-refining and co-developing additional models of peer mentoring to ensure we can work earlier, what we call early action, supporting emerging needs and testing the model in different settings. And we'll speak a little bit more about this later on in kind of the presentation. So our next slide just looks through kind of working through kind of COVID-19 and then looking at kind of our year ahead. And like many organisations in the sector, COVID-19 kind of had a huge impact on our programme of delivery. And as you would have seen in kind of the previous slide, in year 4, and as the first wave of the global pandemic hit the UK and saw kind of UK schools close in March 2020, all of our programmes kind of almost stopped, almost overnight. And at the same time, we had 129 young people who were mid-programme and unable to complete their programme of mentoring. And with no access to schools and face-to-face delivery kind of stopped, as a team, we needed to look at how we can adapt our programme to continue to support young people for an extremely challenging period. And through this, we have developed a youth worker-led programme of mentoring, wellbeing sessions that can be delivered in person, face-to-face or online, and was able to kind of switch our peer mentoring program that's been predominantly based on face-to-face delivery to a format and a method of virtual delivery. And then as we kind of look towards kind of September 2020 to December 2020, and as we entered the new school year in September, it became increasingly evident that young people needed and wanted additional forms of support. And we began to work with several schools to deliver face-to-face peer mentoring, virtual wellbeing sessions, and face-to-face youth worker-led programs. And at that time, between kind of September and December, we were supporting 160 young people. With kind of sessions planned to continue in the new calendar year of January. Unfortunately, again, we were forced to stop our program delivery as a second wave of school closures hit the UK between kind of January and March. But through our work during those kind of 3 months with young people, they was able to kind of share some of their experiences during lockdown and during school closures, and was able to kind of draw out some common themes. And some of these themes were around isolation, fear, feeling unconnected, loss of purpose and identity. And through the experiences and feeling that their experiences that they experienced were unique to themselves. But through being able to kind of reconnect with their peers and share their experiences during the program and during our sessions, whether they be their peer mentoring sessions, wellbeing sessions, or our youth worker sessions, young people are able to kind of normalise some of their experiences and to see that their peers were also kind of experiencing the same or kind of similar experiences. And as we kind of look towards kind of the start of the new calendar year of January and the year ahead, we've been really fortunate to be able to receive a grant for a youth endowment fund in response to kind of COVID-19, and recognising that some of the most vulnerable young people have both lost the support they relied on and are kind of becoming increasingly invisible. So the grant is allowing us to kind of test a hybrid model of face-to-face and virtual delivery of a pre-transition focused peer mentoring program, where we will be training mentors who will then be supporting up to 20 Year 6 primary school students in the lead up to their transition to secondary school. The Year 6 young people have all been identified as being vulnerable at the point of transition and or at risk of exclusion once they transition to Year 7. But also recognising the additional pressures that the global pandemic has placed on families, the programme is also allowing us to kind of further test an holistic approach to our work, thus working kind of with children and their families by providing wraparound support interventions, and guided parental stroke peer support sessions for the parents of our young people that we are working with on this programme. We're also kind of continuing with other commissioned peer mentoring programmes, and we've also been approached by a number of schools who are looking at using peer mentoring as a form of support for their students as we move towards the summer holidays. What I would now like to do is I'd like now to hand over to Graziella, who will take us through her kind of part of the workshop.
And can you please help me with the slides if you can actually, yeah.
Yep, I will do. So if you let me know, I'll move on.
Thank you. So the motto of this program is it's all about relationship. And so it's a success key factor on all the layers linked to this project. We're talking about also using a partnership model approach and co-production stance. So, you know, all layers. So with commissioners, of course, community links, and schools, camps, also community services, and also Anna Freud Center, which was the external evaluator of this program. And again, is important in terms of relationship within the mentoring process between mentors and mentees, but also relationship with the youth workers who deliver the program, and outside community links with schools and camps and teachers, of course, with schools. Another very important approach is the systemic approach, because as we know, each individual is has different systems, interrelated, connected. So when we work with children, we look at the systems linked to the child. In that sense, is their family, schools, friendship, but also resources outside home, which are community resources, but also mental health services. The other very important theory linked to this program is the attachment. When we work with people and children in particular, it's important to think about their attachment. So why this? Because of course, if a child has a secure attachment, it's more able them to form and create positive and meaningful relationship. Jason, can you please change the subject? And in fact, when we talk about the attachment theory, we talk about Bowlby, who identified the central effect of secure attachment with these three components, helping the child to self-regulate, promote self-reliance, and capacity to explore. So, in other words, if the child had the secure attachment and had parents who were able to contain the frustration of their children can learn and then model that secure attachment from their parents, and then being able then to use the same model they learned in other relationships. And in that sense, are able to self-regulate themselves if they face difficulties, and they are able then to believe that they have the coping strategy to solve difficulties they face, and also they have the self-confidence to build relationship with other children, but also seeking support when they need support. Jason, please. Thank you. Now, if we think about resilience, we know that resilience is linked with the environment. So it's not just something that is pertained to a single individual, in this context the child, but also the environment. So what support children get if they need that support. So the Unger is actually the one who studied and focused on understanding more resilience. And he said that the resilience is the capacity of individuals to navigate their ways to resources that sustain their well-being. So how, in this case, children are able then to build up relationship around, feel confident, and seek for support if they need. It's also the capacity of individuals' physical and social ecologies to provide those resources. So again, it's the environment. What are the resources around children can access if they need that. And third is the capacity of the individuals, their families, and their communities to negotiate culturally meaningful ways to share resources. Because as we know, all systems are complex, but also they come with their own cultural background, and it is very important if all the parties involved are able to negotiate different ways linked with their cultural background, and being able then to offer children the support they need. Thank you. So in terms of theoretical approach underpinning this program, we have thought about using, of course, we have different psychological approaches that we could have thought to consider. In terms of this particular program, we thought that positive psychology by Sullivan was very important, and we work with mentors and mentees, in particular mentors when we train them to think about in the past what strategies, positive strategies they applied and when they succeed. And so we ask them, the mentors, to work with the mentees, thinking about what strategies they know, they used in the past and were successful. So we focus on their resources of the children and think about to support the confidence on themselves. Then the other two approaches are the brief strategic therapy and the solution-focused therapy, which are more pertained to the change in itself, so which is the second phase of this program. And the mentoring process, we have the first phase where is mentors and mentees, they get to know each other. The second phase is when they work on change and set up goals. And the third one is the ending. So in the second phase, we look at how mentors working with mentees are able to support them and overcome difficulties. And we use the theories, the approaches to the brief strategic therapy and solution-focused therapy, because we mentors actually are trained to ask a specific question, 2 different questions to mentees, so they are more aware. So mentees answering this question are more aware of their current situation, their problems, and think to how to overcome the problems to these 2 questions that later on I'm going to share with you. The third one is the person-centered approach, and of course we work with complex individuals, and we focus on their needs, their context, the systems linked to them, and also what they want to achieve and what kind of support they want from the mentors. And the next slide. Thank you, Jess. So as I said, the second stage, part of the mentoring process, is change. So how mentors are helping mentees to make changes. So we have to think that mentees meet with mentors. They might just have some difficulties, and difficulties can be the relationship with the peers, but also relationship with teachers, or maybe they are finding difficult to good marks. And at this point, they set up goals with their mentors, and the change, so how we enable change. And again, as I said, the two questions that are asked in usually the meeting, mental health with mentees. The meeting is the number 3 or 4 at the third meeting. So the question are, how, so the mentor would ask the mentee, if you wanted to make things worse, what would you be doing or thinking? With these questions, the aim is to put the mentees in the position to reflect on the current situation, improve the self-awareness regarding the problem, and also thinking about what they actually are doing currently that are making things worse and not better, and then to enable them to think and possibly stop those behaviors. An example, if a child has difficulties to talk in front of other children, in lessons, they might tend to avoid to talk. And with this question, actually thinking about, if you want to get worse, what would you be doing? Possibly the child would think, I would continue to avoid to talk in front of other people. So it's helping them to be more aware of what is stopping them to overcome the problem. The other question is the miracle question. I don't know if possibly you know this question. Is phrased in this way. So if the problem would disappear from magic, what would you be actually doing? So it's helping children, mentees, to think outside the boxes. So thinking about without the problem. And when they think about, again, with the example of not wanting to talk in front of other people, think, if I didn't have this problem, I would talk. So what would you be doing? So possibly would talk more to other students or talk more to the teacher, and then think about that actually step by step can start setting up goals with the mentors and thinking about small changes, small action they can take in order to overcome the problem, which in this case is talking in front of other people. So very important to think that, again, mentors are not dictating what mentees need to do, but is working again and thinking about this partnership approach. So the goals are agreed between mentees and mentors. And last, I don't know if, okay. Yes, this is a message from Asia. And this is a child of 12 years old, is a girl, and she has experienced COVID, and now she is experiencing long COVID. So thinking about today, I did ask her what I could have shared. If she wanted to share something, share with 2 other children and profession. And this is the message. And the message is, even if things get hard, never give up on your goals. I think it's a very positive message. And Nick, now I leave the scene to you to talk about all the data and the evaluation of this fantastic program.
Excellent. Thank you, Graziella. And thanks for kind of really spelling out that kind of core principle of why More Than Mentors is really all about relationships, and therefore why we've needed to think about how to effectively prove that within our sort of search for the evidence. So just to kind of take us back almost to the origins of when sort of More Than Mentors was set up, and we were starting to look at peer mentoring kind of within a sort of resilience sort of research area, in terms of how can peer mentoring have a real impact on children and young people's mental health. There was a lot of evidence around the possibility that it was having an impact within education circles, or it was having an impact within different sort of very specific areas of service. You know, sort of drug and alcohol misuse is another area where it's sort of regularly used. But actually, what about children and young people's mental health? Was there a role for it? And certainly there wasn't much evidence for it. But in combination with that, there was thinking about who should be the kind of key agent for delivering this work. Classically, CAMS services with sort of very specialist staff and so on, you know, with sort of roles like psychologists and psychiatrists, are often kind of quite removed and remote from communities and being able to engage and work with many young people. And so a big part of this area of work was actually, is there a role for youth workers to be very much the front line in terms of delivery of this this piece of work, and therefore are we actually looking at the role of the youth worker as a sort of frontline worker within the children and young people's mental health workforce? And then that sort of coming back to that kind of question around resilience, how can we actually show that we are building emotional resilience in children and young people through peer mentoring and peer support? So that's where we were at the beginning, and I think that this has kind of informed all the work since. Jason, can you move me on, please? Community Links kind of got asked to do a very specific study by the Department of Health on the back of initial findings of a very small sort of pilot study, but it really took some of those questions and really looked to explore it much further, building emotional resilience, thinking about attendance and attainment in school, thinking about early signs of depression and anxiety, and actually, you know, is this an early action intervention? And actually also thinking about the benefits, the sort of positive impact that volunteering can have for the mentors, so that the thinking and evaluation was informed by exploring what was going on for the mentors just as much as what was going on for the mentees, as well as thinking about what was going on in the system around them. Could you go to the next slide, please, Jason? The evaluation has been exhaustive. It's been considerable, and I take great joy in that. I know that a lot of people kind of get very frustrated by forms and filling out things like that, and I hear that pain. Don't get me wrong, but when we kind of come to them being able to say, but actually we have demonstrated impact, that's what we can do with 5 years of work on More Than Mentors. And I feel very proud that we have a data set and a database about children and young people's mental health, which is informed by youth workers delivering a peer mentoring intervention. And actually that's a very significant thing. And so whilst it has been very trying on Jason and his team in terms of delivering, and I imagine it's been a logistical nightmare, and he's probably lost sleep many times over it, I think I do feel that actually by doing a really robust evaluation, we have really been able to kind of sort of stand in front of you guys and just say, look, this is worth doing. This is an important part of children and young people's mental health support. So the evaluation has been child questionnaires. I'll break that down in a second. Some qualitative interviews, some thinking about sort of referrals and links with wider systems, thinking about kind of what's going on within school and actually the attendance and attainment that students have had, thinking about goal setting within sessions and actually rating the sessions themselves, surveys of schools, surveys of mentors and mentees, trainers, so that actually we're learning as we go along. We're not just sort of sitting back on our laurels and going, oh yeah, no, we've got the perfect program, but actually how do we continue to learn, co-learn and co-refine the program as we move forward? And then having specific academic departments, particularly linked to the University of East London, where we've been able to have people doing specific areas of work around MSCs or clinical psychology roles and so on, in terms of thinking about particular tasks. Next slide, please. That child questionnaire that I referred to is an amalgamation questionnaire. It's quite exhaustive. It's got 72 questions, and I know that that will be kind of quite terrifying for some, and it feels like, oh my goodness, you know, that's so overwhelming. But with the right support and somebody sitting alongside a young person being able to kind of help them think about that questionnaire, I think it was manageable for many. Not all. We know that some are going to really struggle with it, but most were able to do so. And in that, we were able to take validated scales like the strengths and difficulties questionnaires, the WebWEMS, the perceived stress scale, and the student resilience survey. So we really were able to think about resilience, well-being, perceptions of stress, and how people were feeling they were coping overall. Jason, next slide, please. I'm not going to try and give you the database, particularly as I think I've got 3 minutes to go, and I'm kind of keeping a close eye on the clock. So, and there may be questions. But what I do want to do is just kind of give you an idea of what claims you can then make, having got a data set and a database on board. And these are just sort of findings that we've sort of taken out of different sections of the evaluation report. But you look at the strengths and difficulties questionnaires. These are the overall scores. It's a measure that's really helpful for just kind of giving a sense of where a young person is at, and it's a self-reported measure. So it's actually not, say, a teacher or a parent or whatever, but it's actually the young person themselves giving their view. And for the mentors on the program, actually their strengths and difficulties questionnaires remain flat, suggesting that actually overall we chose good mentors, or they were recruited well to the program, and actually they didn't have too many difficulties at the beginning and they didn't have too many difficulties at the end. And that's exactly what we would hope for. What we got for the mentees, though, was that they were recognized as having a bit of a struggle at the start, and by the end of the program, there was a definite improvement. There was a drop in their overall strengths and difficulties questionnaire score, which suggests actually they were doing better. Next slide. And likewise, the perceived stress scale gives a really good idea of what is going on for the young person, a self-reported sort of measure of stress. And when we think about how people are talking about stress within this kind of current climate and context, actually, this is a really helpful tool. It's an incredibly simple tool to use. And again, from time 1 to time 2, we see a real drop in overall sort of perception of stress by the mentees. Mentors, again, remain pretty flat, but the mentees definitely less stressed. Next slide, please. So we've learned a lot from this. We've learned from the feedback, but we've also then been able to kind of develop models of thinking and embedding that within the practice, and then also adapting the model so that we then work sort of in a flexible way and in a creative way to deal with particular issues that arise for the school. So it might be around transition, online support, addressing COVID concerns, and so on. But the most important thing is that we've kind of got a culture of co-learning and co-refining, which allows us the sustainability of this program. Next program, please. Next slide, please.
That then brings us to the end of our presentation for this morning. We are kind of 5 minutes left, so we're happy to kind of open the floor up. Chi, the kind of moderator, I'm not sure if there's any kind of questions that have come in, but we're open the floor for a kind of a short kind of Q&A session.
Thank you, Jason. Well, we haven't had any questions as such, but Claire Corin has sort of asked a couple of questions about sort of the More Than Mentors program itself, in terms of asking about whether it's patented or for sale. So perhaps you might want to sort of come back to her on our sort of applicability or what we've done in the past when someone expressed an interest in More Than Mentors and how we've worked with other agencies.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. I think that's something we can kind of communicate kind of off of or kind of outside of the presentation. So, Chi, if you could take some contact details for us, that'd be brilliant.
Sure thing. I'll share my email address.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No other questions. So I'm trying to multitask here, trying to sort of wrap up and share my email address at the same time. So forgive me, Claire. I will do my best to send you an email after I wrap this up, if it's okay. But I've got some a little bit of housekeeping first. But just to say, Graziella, Nick, Jason, thank you so much for that presentation. I must admit to everyone on the call, I've heard that maybe 3 times now in slightly different context, slightly different format, but I've never ceased to be inspired by the amazing work that the More Than Mentors team do. And you know, the fact that it's actually evidence-based and the evaluation and the data as well that drives it, it really is an incredible program, actually. And we say that a lot in the charity sector, but sometimes, unfortunately, all too often, we can't necessarily back it up with hard facts and evidence. But More Than Mentors does the sort of the soft side, in that we understand it easily, we see that it works, but also there's evidence as well. So it's a great program, and thank you. all for speaking to us about it.